Every single day, an invisible artery of the global economy pulses through a narrow strip of water in the Middle East. It is not a place most people will ever visit, yet its importance touches nearly every corner of the modern world. Between Iran and Oman lies a passage so critical that any disruption there can ripple across continents within hours. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a name that quietly carries the weight of global energy security. At first glance, it doesn't seem particularly extraordinary. At its tightest point, the strait stretches only about 21 miles across. But for the massive oil tankers that pass through it, the usable shipping lanes are far smaller, just a couple of miles in each direction. Through this narrow corridor flows an astonishing volume of energy, with tens of millions of barrels of oil moving through every single day. It is, in every sense, a lifeline. And like any lifeline, it is vulnerable. The world has been reminded of that vulnerability time and again. Warships glide across its waters, their presence both protective and provocative. Tankers have been seized, damaged, or shadowed. Insurance costs surge whenever tensions rise, quietly signaling the risks that lurk beneath the surface. For shipping companies and energy markets, the Strait of Hormuz is not just a route, it is a constant calculation of risk. What makes this place truly unsettling is not that it is closed, but that it doesn't need to be. Even the hint of disruption can send shockwaves through global markets. Oil prices spike, governments issue warnings, traders react instantly, and far from the trading floors, ordinary people begin to feel the consequences, in the form of rising fuel prices, increased transport costs, and more expensive everyday goods. From New York to Tokyo, the effects travel fast and far. This raises an intriguing question, one that has lingered in the minds of engineers and strategists for decades. What if ships didn't have to pass through this narrow and politically sensitive passage at all? What if there was another way, a route that bypassed the Strait of Hormuz entirely? The idea sounds almost like something out of a grand engineering dream. Imagine carving a massive canal through the rugged terrain of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, a direct channel linking the Persian Gulf to the open waters of the Gulf of Oman. Tankers could avoid the strait completely, sailing freely without navigating one of the world's most tense choke points. On paper, it feels like a perfect solution, elegant, decisive, and transformative. But as with many bold ideas, reality is far more complex. To understand why, you first need to look at the geography that makes the Strait of Hormuz so important in the first place. The Persian Gulf is home to some of the world's largest oil producers, countries whose economies and exports depend heavily on maritime routes. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates all rely on this single exit point to reach global markets. Nearly all their oil shipments must pass through this narrow gateway. Every day, roughly 1/5 of the world's oil consumption flows through this corridor. Few places on Earth carry such concentrated economic importance, and unlike other major trade routes, alternatives are limited. Some nations have tried to reduce their dependence. Saudi Arabia has built pipelines that transport oil across its territory to ports along the Red Sea, offering a partial workaround. The United Arab Emirates has developed its own pipeline system, leading to the port of Fujairah, located outside the strait. These projects provide valuable flexibility, but they can only handle a fraction of the total volume. The majority of global oil shipments still rely on tankers navigating the Strait of Hormuz. This dependence creates a strategic dilemma. When so much of the world's energy supply passes through a single narrow point, the risks become concentrated. Engineers, planners, and policymakers all recognize the same uncomfortable truth. Choke points are inherently fragile. And that brings us back to the Musandam Peninsula. On the map, it appears as a rugged extension of Oman jutting into the Strait of Hormuz. Its coastline is jagged, its terrain dramatic, but what makes it especially intriguing is its position. In certain areas, the distance between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman is surprisingly short. Only a few dozen miles of land separate the two bodies of water. This geographic coincidence has inspired a bold question: why not cut through it? In theory, a canal here could transform global shipping routes. Instead of funneling through a narrow and politically sensitive strait, vessels could take a direct path to open waters. The risks associated with the Strait of Hormuz could at least partially be bypassed. It is a vision that has captured imaginations for years. But maps can be deceiving. The Musandam Peninsula is not a flat expanse of desert waiting to be reshaped. It is part of the Hajar mountain range, one of the most rugged landscapes in the region. Towering limestone peaks rise sharply from the coastline, creating a terrain that is both beautiful and unforgiving. Some of these mountains reach heights of more than 2,000 meters above sea level. Constructing a canal through such terrain would not be a matter of simple excavation. It would require cutting through solid rock on enormous scale. Entire mountain ridges would need to be carved away. The engineering challenge alone would be staggering. And then there's the scale of modern shipping. Today's oil tankers, particularly the massive, very large crude carriers, are among the biggest vessels ever built. Any canal designed to accommodate them would need to be exceptionally deep and wide, capable of handling ships hundreds of meters in length. This is not a modest construction project, it is a monumental undertaking. The amount of material that would need to be removed is almost difficult to comprehend. Millions upon millions of tons of rock would have to be blasted, transported, and disposed of. The environmental impact would be significant, potentially altering entire ecosystems in the region. Then comes the question of cost. Even some of the largest infrastructure projects in history begin to seem modest by comparison. The expansion of the Panama Canal, for example, cost billions of dollars. A canal through the Musandam Peninsula could require investments on a scale far beyond that, potentially reaching into the hundreds of billions. It would be one of the most expensive engineering projects ever attempted. But even if the engineering and financial challenges could somehow be overcome, another obstacle remains, one that is often even more difficult to navigate: politics. The land in question belongs to Oman, a country that has its own development priorities and strategic considerations. As of now, there is no official plan to construct such a canal. Oman has focused on developing its ports, tourist sector, and infrastructure in ways that align with its national interests. A project of this magnitude would require unprecedented international cooperation. Multiple governments would need to agree. Investors would need confidence. Security arrangements would have to be established and maintained over the long term. And even then, a deeper issue remains. A canal would not eliminate the problem of vulnerability, it would simply relocate it. Instead of relying on a natural choke point, the world would depend on an artificial one. And like any canal, it would carry its own risks. A single grounded ship could block it. A targeted attack could disrupt it. Even natural events could render it temporarily unusable. In essence, the global economy would be trading one bottleneck for another. So why does the idea continue to surface? Because it reflects something fundamental about the way our world works. Global trade is shaped by geography, by narrow passages, strategic corridors, and the physical constraints of the planet. From canals carved through continents to straits that separate rival nations, these routes quietly determine the flow of energy and commerce. The concept of a Musandam Canal represents more than just an engineering proposal. It is an attempt to overcome geography itself, to redesign the map in a way that reduces risk and increases control. But geography is not easily rewritten. Mountains stand where they have stood for millions of years. Political realities evolve slowly, often resisting sweeping changes. And the balance between cost, risk, and reward remains delicate. For now, the Strait of Hormuz continues to play its role as one of the most critical energy corridors on Earth.